Yeah. All righty, and again, I apologize. I'm sorry we had to shrink your tabletop conversation, but at least we're at the beginning of our time together, so we've got a couple of days to engage. Could I have everyone's attention? And again, I know I cut good conversations short, but this is a chance to engage across the entire room. So we've got some mic runners out there, and why don't we just open the door to questions, things that you've heard, both from this panel, and then we've got members of the first panel who are at a table with microphones, so feel free to direct questions to them as well. And if you raise your hand, we'll get a mic to you, and, oh, hands are up. Give us your name and where you are from. Mic is coming to you right now. Yes.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Shakima Fulmore Townsend, and my question was asked actually for the Cook County workforce. It was, when you talked about transforming performance, I'm curious to know if in your technical assistance efforts you found that there was actually drastic underperforming, or was there underreporting of what was occurring?
Great. Here comes the mic.
So it wasn't underreporting because there are some strict federal guidelines around reporting. And then we have a team of compliance monitors that go out to make sure that the reporting aspect is being done properly. Most of it really had to do with operational issues within those organizations. Of those 8, I would say, off the top of my head, I could be wrong, but 4 or 5 of them actually closed their doors. So some of it had to do with funding, but a lot of it had to do with management and oversight. And then for the others that remained, some of their challenges really had to do with operations and just sort of understanding all of the mechanics. The federal programs are very complex and they're very heavy in terms of paperwork and documentation, and those grants are not for everybody.
Great. Yes, please.
My question, Omar Paz in San Diego, Jacobs Center for Neighborhood Innovation. My question is for Lisa Morrison Butler. Yes. So I come from a city with our mayor does not have a specific role in education, doesn't have a formalized role in K through 12 education, and I'm really curious, given your perch here, for the portions of the work that Mayor Emanuel and you are doing, sort of what is the mayor able to do as it relates to this problem outside of running the school district or being a role with the school district? I don't know what that infrastructure looks like here, but it's important for us to understand what, besides the school district, your mayor is able to sort of get done in the opportunity of space.
I think that's a great question. So I think one of the things that the mayor does here is to use the power of his office to bring people in. So I don't want to, there are people from the mayor's office here, so I don't want to get in trouble because I said anything I shouldn't say. But for example, one thing that's happening today is he is bringing some of the new voices into his office today because he has heard that there are some conversations going on in town that would appear to be a new start. Oh, let's sit and talk about Opportunity Youth. And he wants to make sure that those well-intentioned folks understand that there is a conversation that has been underway, and he wants to, number one, thank them for their interest, but at the same time, gently, and if you know anything about Mayor Emanuel, then you know that I'm saying gently and really trying to keep a straight face while I do that. He's trying to gently drive them to the one table because even in a city this size and even with new money, there are not enough financial resources to waste a single dime. So in addition to his very energetic approach to making sure that we're not wasting city money, and that we're being as efficient and effective as we can. He is definitely active, sometimes in an obvious way, and a lot of times, like today's meeting, behind the scenes, bringing those other interested parties in to say, we have a table set. And we talked about this a lot. I don't want to put Sandra on the spot here. The question isn't whether or not is Thrive perfect. The question is that the Thrive work is underway. we have been having a conversation for 2 years. And so any initiative that would start new today would still have to do the work that Thrive has done. And so that's some of what he's doing behind the scenes, is saying, we're not trying to tell anybody we've got it solved. We are saying we've set a table, please join us there.
Other questions? Yes, there's a question right back here. And then there's one on the far side to my right.
Hi, Alan Lessick from Oakland. Our conversation at our table was, are you talking about one table as a real fact, or are you talking about that figuratively? Because it seems, from Oakland's perspective, it seems impossible that Chicago would have one table. I don't know, we don't have a, it's not big enough. There's too many players. And even in Oakland, Alameda County and San Diego, as we were talking about, there are enough players, and there's lots of different levels of people and their levels of being able to participate. And so I get nervous when I hear one table, because that basically says, we got the group, actually they're sitting up here, no one else gets to play, or you're just playing minor roles because we're all in charge.
Great question.
That's a wonderful question, and I'm glad you asked it. I think that it is obviously not a literal one table, but there is something to be said for respecting the work that has gone on. And I think sometimes when either new people enter the conversation or new initiatives into the conversation, that sometimes we don't ask the question, what else is happening? And so that's kind of what we're talking about, is starting with a what do we know? And what do we do? And what are the gaps that we see? It's more about that. So it's a figurative one table. It's a mindset of understanding how big the problem is here, that there's no one solution to it, and it's respecting the body of work that has been done. But definitely there is an openness to new folks. If we had it solved, we wouldn't be sitting here. So it's definitely not a literal one table, and the experts weren't all up there. There are many experts here.
Yeah, and I think it's an effort to prevent going back to the beginning and having different tables go back to the beginning. You remember Monopoly, go back to go start. So we don't want to do that, but to build on the work. And one of the things that we've often talked about in a collective impact sense is how multiple collective impact tables can work together, so that you've got that machinery. I think Karen was talking about the wheels and the chains and the gears all working together. You can have multiple collective impact tables working together, but everyone moving forward and building on the knowledge that exists in a community. Anyone else want to add? Okay, we've got two questions over here to my right.
Morning, Lou Maselli at Jobs First NYC in New York. Both a gentle observation and question for anyone who'd like to respond, and it's really about the business perspective and how employers are being engaged in Chicago. How do they tie to the strategy? If there is just one table, what's their seat at that table, and what influence does that have? And perhaps secondary to this, creating jobs and influencing the creation of jobs is one particular skill set, often in the domain of economic development, and developing and cultivating relationships to ensure that jobs that do exist can be appropriately accessible for certain types of populations, like younger workers in general. What are thoughts about that intersection of workforce and economic development strategy in context of employers at your table?
Wow, we've got so many people who would be great on that. Karen?
Good morning. Some of you, yeah, so Steve just said, Karen, 100K. I was like, you're shameless. So, couple of things. So specifically on the economic development piece, so the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership I sit on the Economic Development Advisory Council for Cook County. We also are the liaison to both the city and the county's economic development bureaus. So we are at the table as we're engaging employers who might be coming into the community, who might be wanting to come into the area and avail themselves of various tax incentives. We actually have an ordinance pending that would make us the first source for hiring efforts connected to an employer. So being that front line, doing the pre-screening and connecting them to a talent pipeline within the city and the county. So that's one piece. The other piece is the mayor actually just started an economic development kitchen cabinet that consists of community-based folks, us, and some other agencies throughout the city and the county to meet. We meet now every 2 weeks to provide feedback, give input, but we are the direct front line with the employers. We work with more than 300 employers right now. I'll give you one example, was Uber. Just was making an effort to bring on 10,000 folks. They hired 800 through us just in the past couple of months. So we are that frontline sort of business-facing group. The other piece that we do is all of the agencies that we fund, we have a monthly business services team meeting. So representatives who are business-facing from those agencies come together. We convene regularly to talk about best practices and really provide a framework for interacting with employers. So it's not just that any one organization owns those relationships, because it might be that you over here at this agency have a relationship with an employer, but you don't have a person in that pipeline that actually fits that employer's need. That person may be at another agency across town. So we've also created a platform, a web-based platform that will allow for that interaction so that we can actually find the talent and match the talent with the employers. Lastly, I would say that the 100,000 Opportunities Initiative is also a great opportunity to connect with employers who are specifically seeking and have made a commitment to hire young adults. And so we are continuing those efforts. We've had the initial launch event last August, which was massive, and we were able to pre-screen about 1,200 young people. There were 600 offers extended on the first day, and then 300 callbacks. And so I think roughly about 800 or so young people were hired from that event. We had a subsequent event in January. We'll do another one in May, and we're going to continue those efforts through the support of the Aspen Institute and the Schultz Family Foundation.
I just wanted to add something quickly, and then we'll get to another question, which is 100K is the companies who have raised their hand and said, we're interested in hiring Opportunity Youth. And so that is the most dedicated business engagement effort we have in town for this population. What I think is a critical next step is there are lots of business tables that are industry specific or through the chamber that talk about inclusive hiring. And vets and people with disabilities are top of the list of conversations at those tables of how do we do that well. Opportunity Youth rarely come up in those conversations. I think it's because it's not really clear how to tap into the population. So as we get our acts together in terms of creating the pathways for Opportunity Youth, the next step is to connect those pipelines to the industry-specific tables.
Great. There's another question over here.
Natar with Covenant House Academy in Detroit, Michigan. And I'd like to thank the Aspen Institute because these convenings do help us do our work back where we come from. And part of the problem or the challenges that we have is just as we have traditional and non-traditional students, we have traditional and non-traditional staff who have a traditional mentality. They're bringing years and years of how they used to do things. So as you are creating a model of how you're going to convene and how you're going to align yourselves as you continue with your work, if you can share that with us, because we have a challenge to try to articulate Opportunity Youth when we go back home to these traditional staff people, to our administrators. They don't really understand what it is that we're doing. They know that we're doing great work, but when you do create that model of how you are going to align yourselves and how you're going to come to the table. Each time I go back home, we have a new theme. When I went to the other Aspen convening, it was change the narrative. So we talked about go from at-risk youth to Opportunity Youth. Just to give us some material, maybe PowerPoints, webinars to help us train our staff so that they can be on the same page as we are, and also show us how to get to the table back home. So that's just, if anyone wanted to respond to that or give us some strategies on that. Thank you.
Great. Now, Mike, please.
Just quickly, one of the things that I want to indicate, and this is still a work in progress, but the My Brother's Keeper Alliance that came out of the Obama administration has a new leader, Blair Taylor, who was at Starbucks, who was instrumental in the creation of the 100,000 initiative. I think one of the things that Blair is interested in is seeing how from that national perch with the kind of board and influencers that they have on there, how they can help to change the narrative or provide the kinds of tools that are necessary and needed in order to have kind of to build that national movement around opportunity youth. And so you're going to hear from Blair also in the months to come, as he's going to be going around trying to learn how that work can help move and propel all of this important work forward.
Right, thank you. And I will say, in wrapping up, I'm getting the hook, that one of the things that we try to do and want to be intentional about, we see this as a learning community that we are in collectively, and ways that we can support one another, to your point. So when the convening is over, we always try to send out the PowerPoints, the information that were presented here, so you have that, but also to do that over the months to come in between our convenings as well, and identify other learning opportunities for everyone in this room and beyond. Even though this is the set of communities that we are working with through Aspen, through Opportunity Works, through 100K, we know that there are so many people out there who are doing this work, and we want to share that. This is as open source as we can possibly be. So thank you for that, and it is our goal to continue to do that and to deepen that work. At this point, I am going to, speaking of learning, I'm going to have to wrap up this plenary, but only to ask you to go to your breakout session, where we'll have an opportunity in smaller groups to dive into so many issues of interest, and then we'll be back together again for lunch. I want to please ask you to thank all the members of both panels, and I want to thank you for your participation. Thank you. Thank you.